Welcome back to the news today. Some say that football is a religion, but in Israel, religion and football collide in a different way. Since Israel was founded, most of the professional football games were played on Saturdays. But recently, the Tel Aviv Labor Court ruled that Saturday football games in Israel were illegal because the teams do not have a permit to engage in their profession on Saturday, the Sabbath, as the law requires. Those permits are issued by the economy minister, currently Deri, from the ultra-religious party Shas. The Israeli Football Association demanded that those permits will be given, and if not, threatened heads of the association that they would suspend games altogether. This issue brings up the old tension between the secular and religious population in Israel, and to understand more about that, here's with me Professor of Political Science, Dr. Hani Zubeida.
Hi, Lucy.
And you don't like football at all?
No, not at all. I just write about it. My son plays.
No. You don't understand anything on football. And of course, Dov Lipman, political analyst and former member of Israel Parliament i24 party. Good evening.
Good to be here, and also a big sports fan.
Big sports fan. So, what do you think about that? Should they play it on Shabbat, or should they not?
So I'll make a strong opening statement, and I'll say my ultimate goal would be that any athlete who wants to be religious and keep the Shabbat in a Jewish state should be able to do so, and a Jewish state should be able to accommodate that. However, I don't think that should come from the religious side forcing it on the secular side. I think it's time for a real conversation between the two sides to give room on both sides. For example, we should say no soccer on Shabbat, but we'll give transportation on Shabbat for the secular side which doesn't have it. Come with a new contract together in unity, and not one side trying to beat the other side over the head.
You know, I'm looking at that. This is the Jewish country. A Jewish country, of course, part of the Jewish religion is to keep Shabbat. When this definition is part of the Israel state, eventually it will collide.
Let me remind you, the first Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, was not forced to give the status quo agreement to the ultra-Orthodox. He gave it from his own will to a Chazon Ish, the Orthodox rabbi, ultra-Orthodox rabbi, not Zionist religious rabbi, ultra-Orthodox rabbi. And in that, it was stated that the Shabbat would be preserved in the state of Israel. Now, it's not Deri. It's not the problem of the Minister of Economy. Every religious member of the government can say, if you play on Shabbat, you break the law. That's the law. If you don't like it, change the law. The government doesn't have enough hands to change the law right now.
They don't have enough hands, or they are afraid from the Orthodox, let's say, parties in Israel, or the Orthodox community.
There's no doubt that the ultra-Orthodox parties and the ministers will not lend a hand to anything which they view as desecrating the Shabbat, the Sabbath, or lending a hand towards secular people to do so. I believe that's unfortunate, meaning I think we have to have the conversation. For 67 years, we've punted, I'll use a sports reference, on this question.
Yeah, but they are controlling, they're controlling right now the government, and they are basically, if they won't agree to do something, this government won't be able to last.
You can't hold the stick from both sides. That's the deal. You can't eat the cake and leave it whole. If this is a Jewish state, you need the ultra-Orthodox to give you the kosher stamp on the Jewish state. Yes, one of them is the Shabbat. There's a different approach to that. The Minister of Interior, Silvan Shalom, has a proposal of law for a few years in which he would like to extend the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Like Europe, like all over the world.
Good thing, Silvan. A group of us, intellectuals, supported that. Why? Because you have to remember, usually, most of the people who need to have arrangements do that on Friday. Those are most of the people in Israel who are like lower classes. Yes. They don't have the time to do it any other way because they work too much. Now, the question which Dov raised, and is a valid question or statement, those who do not want to play on Saturday should have the option, however they want. Because if they play in the Premier League, the Israeli Premier League, they won't have that option.
If we will, I listened to Eyal Berkovitz saying that a player that doesn't want to play on Shabbat, he should not be a football player. He should not play.
Eyal Berkovitz is not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
I could tell you in the Knesset the number of parents that turn to me. My son is a swimmer. My son is a tennis player, and we are Shomer Shabbat. We keep the Sabbath, and they can't. The championship games are on the Saturday. We can't do it. I think we have to find a way to enable religious people. A high percentage, and it's growing in this country, are religiously observant. I do agree very much with Hani that the ultimate solution has to do with another day off. I sat with someone secular, a minister, within the last 2 weeks on this issue, and he said, we just don't have another day. That's the problem. He said, I want to help the religious here, but there's no other day. And if we work on this Sunday issue, then all of a sudden that opens up the possibility for even secular people to say, you know what, let's have the games on Sunday, and let's let the Sabbath be the Sabbath.
Dov, how it worked for you being part in Yesh Atid party when you are a religious man, you're coming from religious views, and you're in a party that was not able, let's say, maybe sometimes to see the other side, to see the religious side. How did it work with you?
When I met with Yair Lapid, the founder of the party, the first time, we sat and he said on every issue of religion and state, we will sit together as a group around a table. It'll be a very difficult process, but we will come to understandings and compromise, and until all 19 of us in the Knesset signed off on it, we're not moving forward. And Shabbat is an example. We sat down on the issue of buses on Shabbat, on the Sabbath day, and we came to an arrangement where it wouldn't infringe on the religious side, but would give some freedom to the secular side. That was the novelty of having religious people sitting together with very secular people and trying to solve these problems. That's what we need to get to in Israel. To have this clash against each other, we'll get nowhere. It'll just increase tensions. We won't have any solutions. But if we're willing to be courageous enough to sit together and both sides make some compromises, we'll get somewhere on these issues.
You know, I'm looking at the situation, and you know, usually football, sports should not be able or should not get into all these clashes and politics, and that but it's always like that, Hani. How come?
Celtic Rangers would not agree with that. Neither will Atletico Bilbao, neither would Barcelona, and so on and so forth. Football, an article I wrote about this will come out in the next few days. Football is always entrenched in politics. This is not the United States. It's not the American football that has a completely different notion. What you see mostly, and in Israel in more particular way, because most of the clubs were affiliated with political parties. Beitar Jerusalem with the Likud, Hapoel Tel Aviv with the Labor, and so on and so forth. The notion is that what we see right now, and I should say that because Dov is kind of like implementing on that and hinting to that, this is not just about football on Saturday. This is a whole different issue. This is about the nature of the Jewish state. And you haven't said a word about the Muslims, about the Christians. You haven't said a word about atheists. You're only talking about Jews, secular versus religious. Where are all the other groups? What should we do with them?
They don't have a problem with Shabbat.
I know, but the issue of the state being Jewish has some kind of a bearing on their way of living, because if you think about the state being only Jewish state, what about other minorities? This whole discussion that we're dealing with leaves them outside the picture.
It's a twofold discussion we never had. David Ben-Gurion stood up and declared a Jewish and democratic state. We never defined what does part one mean, what is Jewish, what is a Jewish state, and we never figured out how do you balance Jewish with democratic with everyone else. And this issue, maybe because football, soccer is so important to us, maybe this will force us to have the discussion even further.
I think first step is enlarging the weekend, adding the Sunday to the weekend. That will solve a lot of issues.
Which, by the way, the Muslim issue is an issue because CEOs of companies told me, but we have Muslim workers we give off on Friday too.
Yes.
So how do we balance the two? These are major issues. It's not as simple as people might think it should be.
It's never easy in this country, huh?
This is why it's so much fun.
I wouldn't like to see both of you like doing
We'll come back next week with a solution to the problem.
Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much
for having us.
Thank you.
Football fans, both of you.